Hi friends, my name is Jenny and I'm back today to do another video. Today I'm going to be chatting through all the books that I hope to read in the month of May, as well as going over my Springathon TBR. So in case you're unfamiliar with the Springathon, it is a readathon hosted by Emma from A Cup of Books, Natalie, A Curious Reader, and then also this year Doris from Aldi Books and Heidi from My Reading Life, who are all 4 channels that I really enjoy watching and would highly recommend you check them out, particularly if you enjoy watching my channel and you're not watching any of their 4 channels. What are you doing? You gotta watch them. They're really good. But this is a 2-week-long readathon that focuses on nature writing and reading books kind of that feature the natural world, which is obviously something that I really enjoy doing both in my nonfiction and my fiction reading. So this is kind of the perfect readathon for me. I participated last year, which I did a whole vlog of, which I'll put a link to up in the cards above. I also will be vlogging this year, so do look out for a vlog after those 2 weeks are done. So I'm gonna start with my Springathon books, and then I'll move into kind of the rest of the books that I'm hoping to read during the rest of May. So this year for the Springathon, the hosts of the readathon did come up with some prompts, which one of my books fits the prompt pretty well, and then the other 3 books don't really fit their prompts, but I'm going to try to finagle the prompts to make the book fit. So you'll see what I mean in just a sec. But the one that fits the best is for the migration home prompt, and that's Two Trees Make a Forest by Jessica J. Lee. The subtitle on this one is In Search of My Family's Past Among Taiwan's Mountains and Coasts. So this is a nonfiction book that is part memoir, part geography, geology, like natural history book about Taiwan. Jessica J. Lee's family is from Taiwan, as the subtitle would suggest. However, Lee, I believe, was born in Canada, as perhaps her parents were as well, and I believe her grandparents immigrated from Taiwan to Canada at some point in like the 40s or 50s, I would imagine. And so this is Jessica J. Lee's story of returning to Taiwan and kind of getting a better grasp of both the natural history there, the geography, the geology, the ecology, but also kind of reconciling that with her family's personal history of Taiwan and their immigration to Canada. So there's a lot of themes of home and placemaking and migration in this book. However, it is human migration as opposed to animal migration, but I feel like this book fits that prompt really well, so I'm super excited to be getting to this one. Then we get into the 3 books that I finagled the prompts a bit more. So the next prompt is Bloom/Decay. So for that, I'm planning on reading All We Can Save: Truth, Courage, and Solutions for the Climate Crisis, edited by Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson and Catherine K. Wilkinson, which, just a PSA, I've been listening to Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson's How to Save a Planet podcast, which is put out by Spotify and Gimlet Media, and I would highly recommend it. It's a great kind of addendum, I think, to this book, as both are kind of solutions-based climate pieces of media, which is obviously something that I'm super interested in, and the podcast is really well done. I find it to be super informative and also has a very kind of hopeful note to it in terms of climate solutions, which I think is really important when interacting with works surrounding climate change. And I believe this is very similar in that it is solutions-based. It's very filled with hope of people who are actually working to kind of make change in the climate sphere. So I'm super excited about this one. It's fitting the bloom decay prompt because climate change is going to both change blooming times for plants, but also increase decaying times because the earth is warming. So there you go, bloom decay. Also, just climate change in general going to impact everything. So blooming stuff, decaying stuff, gonna impact all of it. So there is my connection to the prompt for this book. And then the next prompt is Forage/Hibernate, and for that I'm gonna be reading Bleaker House by Nell Stevens, which is another memoir, and this memoir's subtitle is Chasing My Novel to the End of the World, and follows Nell Stevens as she goes to the Falkland Islands for a writing scholarship to finish her novel there, which I believe she brings Bleak House by Charles Dickens with her, hence the title of this memoir. And I think maybe her novel is also inspired by Bleak House. I've never read Bleak House. I have no interest in doing so, but I've been intrigued about this memoir for years, particularly just I think the Falkland Islands is a very interesting place to me, and also feels like a place you'd go to hibernate. I don't think any animals that are on the Falkland Islands, because it's pretty much penguins, and penguins don't hibernate, but it feels like a hibernation place because it's cold. That's my connection to this prompt. Also, Nell Stevens is kind of foraging for her novel while she's there. So there you go, Forage/Hibernate. Bleaker House is another one that I'll be planning on reading. And then for the last prompt, Buzz/Stillness, I'm going to be reading Fathoms the World in the Whale by Rebecca Giggs. This is another nonfiction book about whales, as the subtitle would suggest, and their ecology and their relationship to humans, and I believe also using whales as an anecdote to discuss the kind of larger relationship between humans and the natural world, which I know Heidi from My Reading Life is reading this right now, where she's recently finished it, I'm not entirely sure, and she's absolutely loving it, so I'm super excited to get to it myself. And it relates to the buzz/stillness prompt because whales use vibrations, I think, to communicate in some ways, and so that creates a buzz in the water. It's also a buzzy book for me because I'm super excited to read it, and it's been somewhat buzzy on BookTube as it's part of this year's BookTube prize for the nonfiction categories. I also will be listening to this one on audiobook, I think, so if you have listened to this on audio, do let me know if that was a positive experience for you, as I do have the audiobook out for my library. So there's the last one that's officially my Springathon TBR. However, I do have one other book that I'm waiting for the audiobook to come in for my library that's kind of anecdotally related to Springathon, which is Vanishing Fleece Adventures in American Wool by Clara Parks. This is another nonfiction, part memoir, part like discovery of the American wool kind of production industry, and I believe Clara Parks goes to speak with sheep farmers and yarn makers and other people kind of involved in that process, and discussing the movement towards kind of locally sourced and locally based yarn products. So excited about this one. Seems like it'll be another book that's very up my alley, and if the audiobook comes in time for the Springathon vlog, I probably will include my thoughts on this book in that vlog as well. So I'm mentioning here also just because I definitely will be reading this at some point in May. Then moving into the arcs that I have to read for the month. The first of those is Unsettled Ground by Claire Fuller, which is coming out here in the United States on May 18th from Tin House Press. And this is a literary fiction novel that's been getting a lot of buzz because it is on the Women's Prize long list, which the shortlist is being announced in a few days. So it'll perhaps be even more exciting if it's also on the shortlist. And this is a literary fiction novel that is about two adult siblings who have been living with their mother in a very rural, isolated cottage for their entire lives. They are well into their adulthood. I believe they're in their like 40s or 50s, and their mother suddenly dies, and they're kind of grappling with what they do next. Do they want to stay in the cottage? Do they want to kind of move somewhere else? I believe since they've lived a pretty isolated existence, they're just not sure if they feel ready to kind of enter the world. I also think there's some kind of secrets about their mother's past, or perhaps their mother is not exactly who they thought her to be or who they knew her to be. So I'm super excited about this one. I've been wanting to try Claire Fuller as an author for a while, so I was happy to receive an arc of this one, and I will be reading it prior to its publication date. And then additionally, I've also started a new vlog series on my channel called Reader of the Last Arc. Kudos to my dad for thinking of that title. It's pretty corny, but it's all we could really think of. But that vlog series is a series in which I read 2 to 3 arcs that are kind of vaguely related to one another over a theme. So I'll put a link to my April vlog where I read 2 nonfiction books and talked about them kind of in depth. But this month I will be reading 3 feminist literary fiction books, all 3 of which I believe are debut novels as well. So they're connected in a number of ways. But the 3 books that I'll be reading for that are Revival Season by Monica West, which is coming out on May 25th from Simon & Schuster. And this is a literary fiction novel about a young teenage girl whose father is a Black evangelical preacher who travels throughout the South during the summers to give very large sermons, and she is kind of grappling with, I think, her ideas of what faith means to her and what her kind of beliefs are surrounding faith, but also ideas of feminism and womanhood and kind of coming into your own as an adult woman. So I'm super excited about this one. I feel like it will tick a lot of my boxes. Definitely eager to be kind of diving into my thoughts deeper in a vlog. Additionally, for this vlog, I'll be reading Bewilderness by Karen Tucker, which comes out on June 1st from Catapult, which is about 2 girls who are living in rural North Carolina, and they have a very close friendship, but a lot of their friendship surrounds drugs and drug addiction. And I think this novel touches a lot on the opioid crisis and the relationships that you developed through drug addiction, and I think also the kind of meanings of friendships as they change because of drug addiction and kind of getting clean and that type of things. And then finally, I'll be reading Animal by Lisa Taddeo, which comes out on June 8th from Avid Reader Press. And this is Lisa Taddeo's debut novel. She wrote 3 Women, which was a nonfiction book that I read last year and really enjoyed. And this one is about a young woman who, after witnessing a really horrific event in her childhood, is kind of emotionally damaged from that. And I believe in her adulthood is kind of grappling with the emotional trauma of that through some potentially less than ideal methods of dealing with that. Particularly, I think she is kind of taking revenge on men who have wronged her, or men who perhaps have wronged other women, perhaps even like sexual assaulters or something. I'm not entirely sure, but the back does say, honestly, sometimes I think it's the only recourse, killing men in times like these. So I think she's going around killing people. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm super eager to get to this one as well. So do look out for that vlog towards the end of the month, perhaps even the very beginning of June, since 2 of these are technically June releases. But if you are interested in any of those books, I definitely will be talking about them in depth in that vlog. Then moving into 2 books that are related in some way to the book club that I do with 2 of my best friends. The first of those is our April and May pick that I have to read at some point in like the first couple weeks of May, and that's The Office of Historical Corrections, a novella and stories by Daniel Evans. This is a short story collection that includes the novella The Office of Historical Corrections, and I believe these stories are kind of interacting with the ideas of US history and who gets to tell history and how do we remember history kind of individually but also collectively. So super excited about that. Those are definitely topics that I'm really interested in, and I heard nothing but amazing things about this collection. So super excited to get to it in the first couple weeks of the month. And then also I need to read Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay by Elena Ferrante, as I think my book club will be reading the 4th and final book in the Neapolitan Quartet during June and July for our next book club pick, because we all are really eager to get to the last book and I need to read the 3rd one before that. So hopefully I will be getting to this 3rd one at some point during the month of May, and I'm putting this on the TBR because I want to hold myself accountable to actually reading this book. I can't talk about what this book's about. In fact, I don't even know really what this book's about because I like just going into them blind. Obviously I've read the first 2 books, so I know what's happened previously, but in general this series is about Elena and Leila, who are 2 best friends that are living in Naples, Italy in the 1950s in a working class neighborhood, and both are very intelligent, both are very driven people, but their circumstances of being women in a working class community really limit their options, and so for that reason they're very competitive with one another and have a lot of kind of toxic friendship traits, but also have a deep love for one another, and that kind of manifests itself differently throughout the course of their lives, which is what this book covers. So I'm super excited about this one. The last one ended when they were about 23, 24, and I assume this one will go fairly far into their adult lives, as I think by the end of the 4th one they'll be like in their 60s or 70s. So I assume this one will cover a bit more time than the 2nd one did, but I'm not sure. Excited to get to it regardless. And then as always in my April TBR I picked 3 reading women prompts, as I'm trying to complete as many of the prompts as I can in the first half of the year. And so the 3 prompts that I picked in April that I'll be reading this month in May are a book about the natural world, which any of the 5 books that I mentioned for Springathon are all written by women, so whichever one I finish first will be the one that I count towards the reading women prompt. My second one was about a woman in politics, which I have pre-ordered Stacey Abrams' While Justice Sleeps, which comes out on May 18th. And I also am going to a launch day event with her put on by a local bookstore here in Atlanta, as obviously she's from Georgia. So I will be reading that one, which is a political thriller about a Supreme Court case, I think, that involves the medical field and potentially like pharmaceuticals, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't entirely know what it's about. I don't super care. I'm going to read it. I assume there are some women in politics that are involved in this book, so I'm going to count it for that. And then the last prompt that I picked last month was a YA book by a Latinx author, and for this I'm pretty sure I'm going to listen to on audio from my library Cia Martinez and the Moonlit Beginning of Everything by Raquel Vasquez Gilliland. I meant to look up how to say her name before I started filming and then I forgot, so sorry if I've mispronounced her name, but this is a YA contemporary with some speculative elements about a young teenage girl whose mom has disappeared and they believe she's died in the process of, I believe, them coming to the United States. And so this deals with a lot of topics of immigration and ICE, but according to the blurb, our main character, Cia Martinez, ends up stumbling on some aliens that have actually taken her mom. So there's some weird alien science fiction elements of this, and I'm super excited about that. It sounds really fun, really weird, really different. And then to pick my prompts for next month, which will be June, which is crazy to think that June is already here, I have my little collection of prompts. But before I do that, I also want to mention that one of the prompts I definitely will be trying to complete in June is the short story collection by a Caribbean author prompt, as June is Caribbean Heritage Month, and I believe also the Caribathon will be happening again this coming June, so it feels apt to fit that prompt with June as a month. So I will only be picking 2 prompts, and I actually really do not have that many prompts left. I've been pretty good about completing them. I have 3 prompts that I've already picked that I've not yet finished, but once I finish those I think I'm like over halfway done, which is really quite exciting. So let's pick my 2 prompts for June. The first of those will be a poetry collection by a Black woman. So I had a few options for that. I'll have to kind of look into that more. So I'm not entirely sure what I'll be reading quite yet. And then the other one will be a Muslim middle grade novel. Okay, very fun. I was potentially thinking of trying to complete that prompt during middle grade March, but then I didn't get around to it. So I will be completing those 2 prompts as well as the short story collection by a Caribbean author prompt in June. And then last but not least, I also like to pick books that have been sitting on my shelf since before 2020. However, I've actually kind of gone through this and taken out a few books that I've read for other reasons, and then also added a few books. So this is all books that I've had on my shelves since a year ago. So up until April 2020 is now included in here, and there are 20 books in here. I also am going to adjust what I said in my original goals video, in that I'm going to start picking only 1 book out of this little jar, because I just have not been doing a great job of reading both books that I pick. In fact, I can pretty consistently read one but not both of them. So I have quite a backlog of like books that I've picked in previous months that I haven't yet gotten to. So I'm only going to start picking 1 book and hopefully really prioritize that book to finish this month, and then also hopefully finish the ones that I have not yet read from previous months. So I'm only going to pick 1, and that one will be this one, which is Ohio. So the book that I ended up picking was Ohio by Stephen Markley. I've actually had this one for quite a long time, probably close to 2 years. Yeah, it came out back in 2018, and I think I got it at the very end of 2018. So over 2 years this has been sitting on my shelf. And this is a literary fiction novel that takes place in rural Ohio, and Stephen Markley is actually from Ohio, as opposed to the book that should not be named. And I believe this is about 4 adults who are living in rural Ohio, have lived there for their lives, I believe are working class people. And I believe this is kind of an addition to that genre of like understanding the Rust Belt region, although I think Stephen Markley has a bit more of personal insight into that region. And so this book talks a lot about kind of toxic masculinity and the opioid crisis and drug addiction and just kind of topics along those lines. So I'm pretty sure this book is fairly dark, but I've been really eager to get to it for a long time. So I'm excited that this will be the opportunity perhaps to get to it. Those are all of the books that I'm hoping to read in the month of May. There's quite a bit of them, but I've been pretty consistently reading like 14 to 15 books a month. So hopefully I'll be able to get to the majority of these, if not all of them. If you are new to my channel, I'd love to have you stick around and subscribe. Additionally, if you have read any of these books and want to talk to me about them, I'd love to have you do so down in the comment section below. Finally, I hope you're having a great rest of your day whenever you watch this, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.